Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our presentation design webinar. My name is Patsy Timas, Education Director for SWANA, and Jesse Maxwell, our Program Manager for Advocacy and E-Learning, is at the controls today. We'll give it maybe just one more minute to let other people sign on, and then we'll get started. Well, welcome again to those of you who just signed on. Today we're going to be covering some of the most frequently cited tips and guidelines for successful and visually engaging presentations using PowerPoint. So Jesse, if we could move on to that next slide, we'll get started. So how many of you, show of hands, raise your hands, jump right in and start creating your slides and presentation at the same time? You know, I do. Most of us probably do. But it's actually better to start at the end. So did we have any people raising their hands, Jesse?
Nope, not yet.
Okay, maybe we're a little slow on the trigger there. But anyway, knowing what you want to accomplish and working your way backward is some of the advice that many professional speakers give out to people who are starting out. So whether or not you start with pen and paper or on a whiteboard, flip charts, or use post-it notes, whatever works best for you, think about the purpose of your talk. What's the story that you want to tell? And if you want your audience to remember your content, find a way to make it relevant and memorable to them. Connect it back to that problem they're trying to solve, that new thing they're trying to learn. And try to come up with good, short, interesting stories or examples to support your major points. So ask yourself, what do you want your audience to do, to feel, to think about? And if you had a chance to listen to the live or recorded webinar, our first one in this series, you know, we identified who our primary WASTECON audience is. And let me pose a question to those of you who are on the webinar today. Do you remember who they are? Do you remember who we identified? Can you write that in your question box? And if you said that our primary audience was solid waste directors and their management teams, then you're absolutely correct. And we're focusing on public sector solid waste directors and their management teams. That's who we want to focus on. So if your audience could remember only 3 things about your presentation, what would you want them to be? Write them down as you begin to prepare your presentations and your slides and build everything around those 3 things. So before we talk about designing your slides, I just want to cover what has been referred to as the 3 pillars of design. And they are audience, message, and environment. So just if you want to just go back for a second, and if you'll notice on our 3 pillars, they're not all equal. And I'll talk about that in a second. So, but let's move on and talk about the audience. So it really is about them. And I know we've talked a lot about the audience already, and you know who your audience is, but it really is all about them. Your slides and presentations should connect your topic to the things that keep them up at night, the things that their teams struggle with, and the challenges that they see on the horizon. So the next thing to consider is the environment. And here we're not talking about climate change or anything like that. We're talking about the context in which you're going to be presenting. So where you are presenting does have an impact on your design. Lighting, size of the room, even the color of the room, placement of the stage, seating configuration, all impact your design and your delivery. Unfortunately, you don't have a lot of control over some of these elements, but you just need to be aware that they can have an impact and you may need to make some adjustments on the fly. So as we look at this picture, it's a well-lit room, it's got natural light, and both of these are really positive aspects. But do you think the participants in the back of the room can see the slides? I don't know. It doesn't look like it to me, but how would you handle a situation like this? Because it's actually pretty typical. So it's important to see your space ahead of time if possible. If you arrive the day before your presentation or even just a couple of hours before your presentation, go take a look at the room. If you see you need to make some adjustments, we will have a speaker resource room available for you in Nashville. And even if it's not possible to make any adjustments before your presentation, at least you're aware of the situation and you can work with it. So the next pillar, and really the most important one, is the message. We talked about starting at the end, knowing your key takeaways. Well, this is where you start. It's the reason why you're presenting. It's the reason why you are asked to present. So what's your purpose? Is it to educate, tell them something new? Is it to persuade or spark a conversation or even a debate? So the design of your presentation should complement your message and not compete with it. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So what we're going to discuss now is how slide design supports your message, informs and entertains your audience. Um, and these 10 tips are somewhat paraphrased from Gar Reynolds at garreynolds.com. Gar is a professional speaker, and he has many Fortune 500 clients. He lives in Japan with his wife and 2 children. And I have found that some of his resources are just really excellent. So KTS, it's not KISS, it's just keep things simple. Slides should support what you're saying. No complicated or busy slides, lots of white space or negative space, and less clutter equals more powerful visual message. And I've indicated in the bottom right-hand corner that this is 40-point font size. And I'll talk about the importance of font size in a little bit. So while information on the slides needs to support what you're saying, everything you have to say doesn't need to be on a slide. Um, and just because you're limiting the text on your slide doesn't mean that you're necessarily dumbing things down in your presentation. If you have a lot more that you'd like to communicate, you can always prepare a paper or handout, get it to us ahead of time. We can make sure it's available through the app so that your audience can follow along during your presentation or download it later. So remember, people come to hear you and be informed. So your message and your story shouldn't get derailed by unnecessarily complicated or busy slides. And I'll show you some examples in a little bit. So one of the adages is to cut out all the chart junk. So I pointed out the font size on this slide, and there are kind of varying opinions on this, but a good guideline is no font size should be less than 36 point. It's for readability. Think about the people in the back of the room. So in this slide, the title, which is not in a big box, KTS, is 54 point. So you'll notice that I didn't use bullets of any kind. It's not always necessary, but I used color to show a slight variation. And no one of these points is any more important than the other. They all share equal importance. So to avoid dealing with the kind of pre-formatted slide formats where, the bullets show up automatically, I usually start with this slide. So, and this is on purpose. So it's just really a blank slide. It's got the title box up there, which you can resize, move around, delete, do whatever you want to do with it. But it leaves you with all that beautiful white space to do your thing. So it's a simple format. It's easily altered, and you don't, necessarily have to use that format. But if you can stay away from this format, you'll be much better. It'll generate interest from your audience. They'll not anticipate that every slide's going to have the standard title and format. So it's not that you can't use this slide, it's just that there may be a different way to get your point across. So let's move on. All right. So we talked about bullets. And actually, some of the best slides may not have any bullets on them at all. Here we have a simple picture. It's a man with a brain. We've got some statistics or percentages. And you speak to what's on the slide. So it says that if we're looking at a long list of information, people will remember about 10% of that 3 days later if it's just text. But if you add a picture, people will remember about 65%. So that's a pretty good return on investment. So Chris Anderson, who wrote the TED Talks book, says that the classic slide deck with a headline followed by all the bullets is the surest way to lose your audience interest. As a matter of fact, the CEO of Google, when he does his presentations, has only 1 point per slide, no bullets. So actually, the way the brain works, we can't really read slides and listen to the speaker and retain the information all at the same time. I know we all think we're really good at multitasking, but really it's a myth. Cognitive scientists say it's really just not possible. So when we hear information, remember the 10%, but if we hear and see information, we can boost that up to 65%. So more pictures, less text, and fewer bullets. And that brings us to the 166 rule. So if you do have a reason to share information through bullets, which is fine, here's some guidelines. Simple is better. Round, square, or checks. And we'll show you that in a second. If you don't want people to get distracted by an unfamiliar shape, kind of stick with the simple bullet formats. And here's the 166 rule. 1 main idea per slide. 6 bullets or less per slide. And for each bullet, 6 words or less. If you need to, if you have a longer list, then split the list over several slides. And tie images to your bullets. They should be in close proximity if you use images with a bulleted list. And remember, if you do use images, because they take up space, you're going to have, naturally, fewer bullets per slide. And you may be asking, well, why 6 or less? Number one, it's the way the brain works and how much information we can take in at one time. But there's a real practical reason too. Remember those font size that I talked about? Well, it's for readability. And really, if you're going to have the appropriate font size, you can't get more than 6 bullets on a slide at a time. So let's take a look at a couple of slides. These are real slides. The one in the upper left-hand corner is actually from uh, a webinar that I attended last week. And so we're going to open up to responses from the audience in the question box, or Jesse, you can open up the microphones if you want to. But your opinion, what's wrong with that slide in the upper left-hand corner? You may think there's nothing wrong with it, but let's hear from you.
Yeah, you can put it in the chat or question box, or press the raise hand icon and I'll unmute you. So we have at least one person who said it's cluttered. And
Okay.
Another person said it's too busy, won't be able to read.
Okay. Pretty good. I agree. And if you were sitting in an audience, you might get a little frustrated by somebody presenting a slide like this to you, because you really want to know the information. It's just not readily available. The other thing is, if you had this on a mobile device or you were watching this online, you could follow along. So another reason for you to get your presentations and other information into us on time, so we can make things like this available. I'm not recommending anybody do a slide like that, though. So in the lower right-hand corner, and I know we've all seen slides like this. What's wrong with this one? And then I have a, go ahead, Jesse.
Oh, too many words and the font is too small.
Bingo. All right, and I have another question for you. What would you do to make this slide better or communicate the information more effectively? Here's a hint. Edit, summarize. Any other suggestions? Okay, one of the things that this author could have done was presented this as a handout, but on the actual slide, just call out the main points of the executive summary in a few bullets, and then let people read the detail later. Okay, we have a couple more examples. Okay, so yes, we have typical slides. The one on the upper left, it's not terrible, but the font size is too small. And the graphic is not high quality. And I couldn't figure out why they had that graphic on the slide. So your graphics need to be related to your text. And of course, in the bottom one, this is really an eye chart. Nobody's going to be able to read this. And a rule of thumb is you have to reduce your font size down to 10 or 12 point. Then you've got too much information on one slide. You need to break it up. If it's that important, then break it up and spread it out over more than one slide. And of course, the graphic on this one is, I couldn't relate it to what was on the slide, and it was way too complicated for me to process. And that could just be me. Okay. So one of the things, too, is to limit your transitions and builds. So, Jesse, if you'll click, this is, a simple build. It's not too slow, it's not too fast, it's not too fancy, and some animations are fine. We just don't recommend that you use animations on every slide, because then people kind of get bored with it. So simple wipe left to right, because that's the way people read, is good for bullet points. And then we have the transitions between slides. I know you've all seen those, and they can be fine just as long as we don't transition between every slide in the deck, and kind of limit it to, one or two different types of transitions, so it doesn't seem to get jumbled. So, number 4 is use high quality graphics. We all have camera phones that are kind of almost better than the regular cameras. I don't know anybody who even uses a regular camera anymore. Um, but use high quality graphics for your presentations. They pop, they grab attention, and they're just pleasing to look at. They're visually stimulating. The thing about using graphics, though, is, as you'll see, this is attributed to Bertel King Jr., is if you're going to grab a photo or any other kind of image, you need to make sure that you're not violating any copyright um, issues, and that you give attribution. So make sure you do that. All right. So 5, have a consistent visual theme. One of the things we're not really recommending is the use of templates, but you clearly need to have a consistent visual theme throughout your presentation. But it doesn't mean that you have to have one of those pre-formatted PowerPoint templates. So, we've all seen those templates over and over and over again. So, try to give your audience something unique, something new at least to them, um, because nobody is really excited about cookie cutter presentations. And so, what are we going to focus on? Color, using graphics, the font is important. Um, Using space, using white space, negative space. These are all important things to consider as you put your PowerPoint slides together. So, but there is one word about templates that I do want to say. We would like you to use our WASTECON branded template on the very first slide of your presentation, like I did in this presentation. And that's it. That's the only slide we'd like you to use to make it consistent for our archives. So, appropriate use of charts and graphs. So you'll see different kinds of charts and graphs coming up, and many of your presentations will have data that you want to share. And so what's the best type of chart or graph to use? So pie charts are good for showing percentages. It's recommended that you limit the number of slices uh, to under 6. And if there's information you want to pull out, kind of, have that piece of the pie chart explode out of the chart, or some other way to distinguish it. You could have grayed out the other pieces and had the one in blue stick out as the dominant color. In the lower left-hand side, we've got vertical bar charts. And these charts are from easyexcel.com. So vertical bar charts are really good to show changes in quantity over time. Um, and this one's kind of easy to read. It's recommended that you don't get too busy with your vertical pie charts, because it's the same with a cluttered slide. In the upper right-hand corner, horizontal bar charts, again from easyexcel.com, and these are used to compare quantities, sales figures, or regional differences in recycling rates, things like that. And then we have line charts used to demonstrate trends. So these are all examples of the different kind of charts you can use. Some advice on their use is to not have too much information going on your chart so your audience can understand it and you can explain it. If you need more, again, a handout. So we're moving on to, you'll see all these are very colorful, and color use is critical. It invokes feeling and emotion. The right color actually can persuade and motivate people. And studies do show that color usage can increase interest and improve learning comprehension and retention. So they've done a lot of studies with children on this. Um, so color is really important. And there are some colors to avoid using, um, orange being one of them, orange and purple. So too much color variation in your text can confuse your audience. Um, and it can be interpreted as busy. I don't know if any of you, I meant to add a slide here that showed a bulleted list where every bullet was a different color. Um, I've seen those before, and it's not the best way to present your information. So, Jesse, do we have some questions there?
No questions have come through at the moment.
Okay, I just thought I saw a couple of questions on the board. All right, let's move on. So, too much color, um, not necessarily the best way to present, and also understand how color is affected in the environment that you're presenting in. So if you're going to be in a dark room, such as a large hall where the lights are down, then a dark background, dark blue, gray, black, with white or light text works best. And if you're going to be in a well lit environment with either natural light or artificial light, where the lights are up, then a white background or a light background with black or dark text works much better in terms of visibility. So I'm going to be posting some resources, some presentation resources on the speaker resource page. PresentationPro.com is a great one to look at. CreativePro.com. These links will all be available to you beginning on Friday. So the next thing to consider is choosing your fonts. The serif fonts in the lower right-hand corner are actually better for reading. Studies have said that people who are reading text, books, serif fonts work better, especially at lower font size or point sizes. But the sans serif fonts work better for presentations. So this one happens to be Gill Sans MT, which is what I'm using in this particular presentation. The other one is Times New Roman in the lower right-hand corner. So the Gill Sans is, kind of somewhere in between a serif and a sans serif. It's professional, it's friendly, uh, it's considered conversational. So, but there are many different fonts for you to choose from. Just kind of remember the difference between the sans serif and the serif in terms of readability for your slides. So whatever you choose, just make sure people can read it from the back of the room. All right. Use video and audio. Great way to enhance your presentations. Video clips, you can use those to show examples that promote active and cognitive learning. They can, you know, enhance your idea. It's used, people learn naturally through video, and less so through audio, but the combination is a real surefire way to engage your audience. So if you do use audio, try to remember to include a slide with a picture of the speaker or the interviewee or something else that's related to what's on the audio, so people are not just looking at a blank screen. Um, And it is fairly easy to embed audio and video in your presentations now. So you don't have to have an internet connection for playback. Just keep in mind that it's really going to make your file size much larger. And one of the ways you can do that is to just download the audio or video clip in a separate file, have it on a portable drive um, that you can access separately from your presentation. So we've gone over most of the standard guidelines. So we want to, number one, keep it simple. We want to limit bullets and text. Cut out the fluff, get rid of the chart junk. Remember the 166 rule. We want to limit our transitions and our animations called builds. Okay to use them, just not overuse them. And really important to use high quality graphics instead of clip art or cartoonish images, unless that's going to make your point. But high quality graphics are important. People really expect that. We talked about having a consistent visual theme. The theme in this particular presentation was the use of white space, the consistent use of the font type, the consistent use of the font size. All the titles were in 54 point. The text was in 44 point. Nothing less than 36 point. So those are the visual theme and the use of high quality graphics. We talked about which chart would be appropriate to present your information, and we talked about using color, choosing fonts, using video and audio, and last but not least, spending time in slide sorter view. Edit, edit, edit. Looking at things from this perspective, and I've done this a lot myself, gives you a visual picture from your audience's viewpoint. And a lot of times you'll see things where you want to move slides around, you want to edit a slide, you want to chunk up information so that it's more digestible. So slide sorter is a great way to look at things and cut out the fluff. So tools and other resources. On Friday, this Friday, June the 22nd, we'll have our dedicated WASTECON speaker resources webpage available. We'll be sending out a link to everybody, and you'll be able to listen to recorded webinars. I'll have links to other online resources. There's a very good resource called Powerful Panels, series of videos and podcasts. Most of them are under 5 minutes, give you some great tips and insight on panels and moderating. I'll also have some links out there to PowerPoint tips and design tips. We'll be listing all the important dates that are coming up, some that have already passed. We'll have FAQs on how to work with us, what you need to do in order to be prepared for WASTECON, all the things you need to turn in to us so that we can make sure your audiences have the information and access to your presentations before you begin. Most importantly, how to register for WASTECON. We do have a special promotion code for our speakers, a special rate that's listed there. Also a special rate for you to invite your professional network to receive an additional discount for registering through your discount code, which will also be available, and how to make your hotel reservations. So all of that information is going to be ready on Friday for you to access at any time. So do we have a question?
Yeah, we have a couple questions that have come through. The first one was, will you send us the WASTECON slide template?
Yes. Actually, we'll post it on that website.
Another comment was Friday's actually the 29th, not the 22nd.
Well, you are absolutely right. And so it's going to be this Friday, not last Friday. So it will be the 29th.
And a question about presenting. I find it really annoying when people have 20 minutes to present but come with 40 slides. Can you talk about how many slides to prepare? I've heard the rule of thumb is 1 slide per minute.
That's a good rule of thumb. While I was doing some of this research, I also heard that for a 30-minute presentation, you should have about 20 slides. So, kind of in that range, but that 20 slides for 30 minutes gives you time for interaction with other panel members, with the audience. Not necessarily that you're going to spend that much time on each slide.
Okay. Those are all the questions we have at the moment.
Okay. I will do some additional research and I will actually send that information out to you. I do want to see before we move on to our next slide that on the coaching calls, we'll have an opportunity for all the teams to get together and kind of work out the logistics of who's going to be presenting, how long you have, and holding each other accountable. So I do want to see that there is additional help for anybody who wants it. If you want to move on to that next slide. SWANA's Communication, Education, and Marketing Technical Division members are available to help you craft memorable presentations. They'll consult with you on how to pull things together. So Elizabeth Rowe, SWANA certified, who's our past president or past director of the technical division, is available. You see her information there. It will also be on the website on Friday. Also, Ramona Simpson is available to consult with you over your presentations and how to pull together your slides. So we're really grateful to both of them and other members of the CEM technical division for being available to our speakers. I'd also like to say that I'm available if you need any help on executing some of the PowerPoint features. I don't know how experienced any of you are, but I'm available to help if you want. And I do want to say that there is, if you have PowerPoint 2016 or Office 365, there's a new feature. It's not that new, but it's new to me, called Designer, and it is a really fast and easy way to add some design features to your slides. Many of the slides in this presentation today were done using Designer, so I didn't really need to have that much design experience. I just needed to pick from a list of choices that were presented to me, and literally in 5 seconds you can design a slide if you have PowerPoint 2016 or Office 365. So I'll stop here and say, if there are any more questions or comments, we can take those now. So if not, you can always reach me. I am Patsy Timus, and my email is ptimus@swana.org. And I would like to say thank you to all of you for your time today. We appreciate how you make our event successful, and we're looking forward to speaking with all of you on the coaching calls. You've already received your invitation, your meeting invitation. and those will be taking place beginning on Friday and through the rest of the month of July. So thank you very much. That's it for today.